Introduction to the FATF Recommendations, International Standards on Combating Money Laundering and the Financing of Terrorism and Proliferation. The Financial Action Task Force is an intergovernmental body established in 1989 by the ministers of its member jurisdictions. The mandate of the FATF is to set standards and to promote effective implementation of legal, regulatory, and operational measures for combating money laundering, terrorist financing, and the financing of proliferation and other related threats to the integrity of the international financial system. In collaboration with other international stakeholders, the FATF also works to identify national-level vulnerabilities with the aim of protecting the international financial system from misuse. The FATF recommendations set out a comprehensive and consistent framework of measures which countries should implement in order to combat money laundering and terrorist financing, as well as the financing of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Countries have diverse legal, administrative, and operational frameworks and different financial systems, and so cannot all take identical measures to counter these threats. The FATF recommendations therefore set an international standard which countries should implement in measures adapted to their particular circumstances. The FATF recommendations set out the essential measures that countries should have in place to 1. Identify the risks and develop policies and domestic coordination. 2. Pursue money laundering, terrorist financing, and financing of proliferation. 3. Apply preventative measures for the financial sector and other designated sectors. 4. Establish powers and responsibilities for the competent authorities, example, investigative law enforcement and supervisory authorities, and other institutional measures. 5. Enhance the transparency and availability of beneficial ownership, information of legal persons and arrangements, and 6. Facilitate international cooperation. The original FATF 40 recommendations were drawn up in 1990 as an initiative to combat the misuse of financial systems by persons laundering for money. In 1996, the recommendations were revised for the first time to reflect evolving money laundering trends and techniques and to broaden their scope well beyond drug money laundering. In October 2001, the FATF expanded its mandate to deal with the issue of the funding of terrorist acts and terrorist organizations, and took the important step of creating 8, later expanded to 9, special recommendations on terrorist financing. The FATF recommendations were revised the second time in 2003, and these, together with the special recommendations, have been endorsed by over 180 countries, which is more than international financial reporting standards. They've been endorsed by 180 countries and are universally recognized as an international standard for money laundering, anti-money laundering, and countering the financing of terrorism. Following the conclusion of the third round of mutual evaluations of its members, the FATF has reviewed and updated the FATF recommendations in close cooperation with the FATF-style regional bodies and the observer organizations, including the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the United Nations. The revisions address new and emerging threats, clarify and strengthen many of the existing obligations, while maintaining the necessary stability and rigor in the implementation. The FATF standards have also been revised to strengthen requirements for higher risk situations and to allow countries to take a more focused approach in areas where high risk may remain or implementation could be enhanced. Countries should first identify, assess, and understand the risks of money laundering and terrorist finance that they face, and then adopt appropriate measures to mitigate The risk-based approach allows countries within the framework of the FATF requirements to adopt a more flexible set of measures in order to target their resources more effectively and apply preventative measures that are commensurate to the nature of risk in order to focus their efforts in a respective way. Combating terrorist financing is a very significant challenge. An effective AML CFT system in general is important for addressing terrorist financing, and most measures previously focused on terrorist financing are now integrated throughout the recommendations, therefore obviating the need for special recommendations. However, there are some recommendations that are unique to terrorist financing, which are set out in Section C of the FATF Recommendations. These are financial sanctions related to terrorists and terrorist financing. In Recommendation 8, measures to prevent the misuse of nonprofit organizations. The proliferation of weapons of mass destruction is also a significant security concern. In 2008, the FATF mandate was expanded to include dealing with the
That's his name?
financing and proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. To combat this threat, the FATF has adopted a new recommendation, Recommendation 7, aimed at ensuring consistent and effective implementation of targeted financial sanctions when these are called for by the UN Security Council. FATF standards comprise the recommendations themselves and their interpretive notes, together with the applicable definitions in the glossary. The measures set out in the FATF standards should be implemented by all members of the FATF and SFRBs, and their implementation is assessed rigorously throughout the mutual evaluation process, including the assessment process of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank on the basis of the FATF Common Assessment Methodology. Some interpretive notes and definitions in the glossary include examples to illustrate how the requirements could be applied. These examples are not mandatory elements of the FATF standards and are included for guidance only. These examples are not intended to be comprehensive, and although they are considered to be helpful indicators, they may not be relevant in all circumstances. The FATF also produces guidance, best practice papers, and other advice to assist countries with the implementation of the FATF standards. These other documents are not mandatory for assessing compliance with standards, but countries may find it valuable to have regard to them when considering how best to implement the FATF standards. A list of current FATF guidance and best practice papers, which are available on the FATF website, is included as an annex to the recommendations. The FATF is committed to maintaining a close and constructive dialogue with the private sector, civil society, and other interested parties as important partners in ensuring the integrity of the financial system. The revision of the recommendations has involved extensive consultation and has benefited from comments and suggestions from the stakeholders. Going forward, and in accordance with this mandate, the FATF will continue to consider changes to the standards as appropriate in light of new information regarding emerging threats and vulnerabilities to the global financial system. The FATF upon all countries to implement effective measures to bring their national systems for combating money laundering, terrorist financing, and the financing of proliferation into compliance with the revised FATF recommendations. Page 11. FATF Recommendations. Section A. AML CFT Policies and Coordination. Number 1. Assessing risk and applying a risk-based approach.